Here we are. We are now at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we are plowing through into the middle of the Knollapalooza schedule. And with us today from the great state of Ohio, the Buckeye State, we have with us the brothers Collins, Philip and Paul. And guys, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Viz. Thanks a lot for having us, Viz.
All right, is everybody in the house over there?
Just us two right now.
That's the only ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And listen, we've got a warning for you from somebody in the Knollapalooza chat room from Avery, so you know who you can address your poison pen story. He said, what is this? The Vegas line on how many times the word Gundokin is used in the next hours is 3+. They're ready for you, so be careful. What have you guys been up to? I assume that there is something new from last we spoke.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Basically, we have been looking into the whole recent developments concerning war in Iran, and the fact that the drums seem to be beating louder and louder. Yeah. And one part of that whole equation over there that we've been intensifying our research on is Basra, which is in southern Iraq, and it's an area that most Americans probably know little or nothing about, really. But it's really key. Basra is really, really key to understanding the power elite's modern crusade for creating a one-world government. And unless you know a little something about Basra and about Iran's involvement in Basra and the power elite's plans for that particular city, you're not going to understand everything that's coming up in the days, months, weeks, years ahead. And so, yeah, that's what we've been really focusing in on. And what we hope to share tonight, we hope absolutely knocks some socks or whatever off.
Well, I could use it as a little quick pick-me-up. And, of course, we are talking about things extremely grim. And I'm assuming that, should I say that we can hear the war drums in the distance or what?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, where we really start looking right now is on June 27th last month. A former CIA operative filed a motion in federal court requesting the declassification of documents that he claims will show that the agency turned a blind eye to evidence that Iran had ceased work on a nuclear weapon. And the operative has been prohibited by the CIA from using his real name. However, this has not prevented the operative from sharing some explosive claims with the public through his lawyer, Ray Krieger. And Krieger said that the agent was told on 5 different occasions to either fabricate or fail to submit reports concerning weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. And the operative had a 22-year career. And that career began to fall apart back in 2004 when he tried to share secret evidence that was provided to him by an informant that showed that Tehran had suspended work on a nuclear bomb. Krieger stated that 2 internal investigations were carried out in hopes of discrediting the operative when he did this. And the investigations involved allegations of financial dishonesty and an inappropriate sexual relationship with a female informant. And none of the claims were ever substantiated. But the former operative's case is supported by last year's national intelligence estimate, which actually made the news and made a few headlines. It's entitled "Iran Nuclear Intentions and Capabilities," and it asserted that Tehran had stopped all work on its nuclear weapons program in 2003. And the report further stated that Iran's nuclear weapons program remained dormant right up to the middle of 2007. I believe that since the Bush administration, which is basically controlled by a neoconservative brain trust, began saber rattling at Iran. They have since basically started back to work and come out of hibernation with their efforts to procure a nuclear weapon. But it had remained dormant right up to the middle of last year. So the report did attempt to leave an opportunity for invasion open by stating that, quote, Iran probably would be technically capable of producing enough HEU, and HEU is highly enriched uranium for all you non-academics out there, for a weapon sometime during the 2010 to 2015 quote. Still, the report's failure to prove that Iran had any intentions of developing nuclear weapons seriously hurt the contention that an invasion of Iran must be conducted to prevent the spread of weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East. The former CIA operative's assertions add to a growing body of evidence that certain factions of the elite, particularly the neoconservative faction, desire an unnecessary war with Iran. The current administration may even be attempting to instigate such a conflict. Seymour Hersh recently revealed in a just bang-up article in the New Yorker magazine that in late 2007, Congress approved a request put forward by the president to finance a major escalation in covert operations targeting Iran, and those operations are supposed to be designed to destabilize the country's religious leadership. And the covert activities against Iran were described in a presidential finding, and they included the funneling of support to dissident groups such as the Awazi Arabs and the Balochi dissident groups. But we're talking about groups that are really, really, really bad news, and just proof that the administration is not only trying to destabilize the Iranian government, but also they might be in the process of building the next enemy that we will have to face somewhere down the line in the future, especially with the Balochis. And the Balochi dissidents have been described by Robert Baer as not only Sunni fundamentalist, but also as Al-Qaeda. Ramsey Youssef, the individual that was involved in the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks, they're both Balochi fundamentalists. And another dissident group that's being supported by the CIA is the Mujahideen al-Khalq, or MEK. And this group has been on the State Department's terrorist list going back more than a decade now. And according to Seymour Hersh, it's one of the groups that may have their coffers filled with American money as a result of the escalation of covert operations against Iran. So again, I mean, the question arises, why do the war drums beat louder and louder against when it comes to all things Iranian? Well, if you look it might be a matter of oil, and it might be a matter. You hear that a lot. They want, it's all about about gaining control of Iran's oil fields because they're sitting on a ton of it, But that's a little bit too simplistic, and it might be a little bit more. It might be that Iran is actually becoming a major obstacle to the erection of what has euphemistically been termed the New World Order, but is basically a one-world socialist totalitarian government that sidesteps all democratic processes in favor of having law basically determined by decrees set down by an elite, by an oligarchy. And the reason that I say this, if you want the evidence for this, you have to go and read H.G. Wells. and all. He was part of at least two elite combines that we've been able to find in our research, the Coefficients Club and the Fabian Society. He might have also been a Freemason. There's a body of evidence to suggest that. But in Book 3 of The Shape of Things to Come, which he wrote, and Shape of Things to Come is a piece of normative fiction, and normative fiction is something that's prescriptive in nature. In other words, he's making suggestions for the future in the body of a fiction work. And in this case, his prescriptions are being made to the elite. But in that book, The Shape of Things to Come, there's a chapter entitled The Second Conference at Basra, 1978. And in that chapter, Basra is the location of a global conference that gives birth to the world government. So Basra becomes the Bethlehem of the new utopian society that is supposed to arise. And the problem with basically Basra and trying to create this world government in Basra right now is that there is opposition coming from Iran. There is a negative influence coming from Iran. You see, back during the time when Saddam Hussein was still the president over Iraq rather, he chased out a lot of Shiite dissident groups out of southern Iraq. And they went over to Iran, these different groups, and who found themselves disenfranchised because, Saddam, who was a Sunni, and he basically, basically elevated the Sunni minority there in Iraq. Well, when they got over to Iran, what do you think the Iranians did with these people? Well, what did the American intelligence community do with Cuban exiles after Castro came to power and all? They trained them and sent them back to destabilize Castro. The same principle applies here. It's no different. And so the Iranians trained these guys in how to basically conduct covert warfare, guerrilla warfare, and then sent them back to basically destabilize Saddam. After the American occupation of Iraq in 2003, those groups rechanneled their efforts away from the deposed dictator Saddam towards the coalition forces there in Iraq, and basically became the surrogates for Iran to fight a proxy war with America. And so one of the major cities in Basra, one of the major cities in southern Iraq that these Shiites, these Shiite dissident groups, these Shiite militias, have targeted and caused a lot of trouble and chaos in. And so, if this conference, which is supposed to birth the world government, is ever going to happen in Basra, then one of two things has to happen. Either the Iranian influence in Basra and in southern Iraq in general, but in Basra in particular, has to become a positive influence, or the Iranian influence has to be flushed out and pushed out altogether by an invasion of Iran, or something basically comparable to that. And so that's basically what our contentions are right now.
Well, we're with Philip and Paul Collins. You've heard him on many times before. What we're talking about is probably a very current and probably imminent situation that we're going to be dealing with for some time. Philip and Paul have collaborated on 2 books, The Hidden Face of Terrorism, The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship. And guys, do you want to talk too also about, now have you penned an article about this, or are you in the process of doing it? What's the status of that?
Yeah, we're in the process. We're in the process of doing this because basically most Americans don't know a lot about who Muqtada al-Sadr is, and they hear a lot about him on the news, and they hear about how he is just the devil incarnate from this current administration, but they don't know why. Really, the administration, why he is such a thorn in the side of the administration. And the truth of the matter is that Muqtada al-Sadr and his Josh al-Mahdi militia are nothing more than really agents of Iran. It should be recalled that when al-Sadr fled to Iran 2 or 3 weeks, it should be recalled that he fled to Iran about 2 or 3 weeks prior to the security crackdown known as Operation Imposing Law, which began on, I believe it was Valentine's Day of 2007, and he has basically been working on the behalf of Iran, causing all sorts of trouble in Basra, and making it hard for basically that city to be secured, and all as a future site for the birthplace of the New World Order. Back on February 27th to September 3rd of 2007, the Josh al-Mahdi militia, his militia overran Basra and held the UK bases there under siege, and on September 3rd, the British withdrew their forces from Basra Palace, and the Josh al-Mahdi and I think about two other militia groups, all these other insurgents, took the city, and that became a real problem to the power elite here in the United States. And what occurred then was this year, all throughout through the latter part of March, from March 25th to March 31st of 2008, the Iraqi army conducted an operation to push the Josh al-Mahdi out of Basra, and the outcome was indecisive, and the battle to this administration that Iran was supporting Shiite militias, and the U.S. ambassador to Iraq, Ryan Crocker, went as far as to claim that Iran was engaging in a proxy war. And if you look at Basra today, you'll see that basically Basra and much of southern Iraq is really under Iranian control, no matter how much it sounds like there's the coalition government is in control. It's really owned part and parcel by Iran currently. I know a U.S. contractor in Baghdad who runs convoys from Kuwait told former CIA field officer Robert Baer, who was the individual who wrote the screenplay for the movie Syriana and wrote the books
See No Evil.
Yeah, See No Evil.
Mm-hmm.
He told Robert Baer that the currency in Basra is the Iranian toman and not the Iraqi dinar. And the contractor also informed Baer that he has to pay a 40% surcharge to Shiite militias and Iraqi soldiers that are affiliated with the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps there. So, I mean, it's really become a stronghold for Iran. And this has to be changed in the eyes of the power elite here for Basra to become the Bethlehem of the New World Order. And it's really funny, though. Oh, I'm sorry, Viz. Let me throw in this one last thing. It's really curious too. If you look back to March 25th, to when the Battle of Basra occurred, and they tried to expunge those Shiite militias, and all, do you know what the name of the operation was? That whole operation to basically push out Sadr and those Iranian-controlled Shiites.
Whatever it is, it's going to be ironic. It's going to be ironic.
Well, the name was Operation Charge of the Knights. That might be, we speculate, and this is just speculation, okay?
Wait, hold on. You're talking Knights like K-N-I-G-H-T-S.
Yeah, K-N-I-G, yeah.
Okay.
We think this might be a reference to the Knights Templar. And, whether it is or isn't, and of course the Knights Templar were basically, the Freemasons considered themselves to be descendants of the Knights Templar, and Freemasonry formed a large portion of the philosophical foundation of the New World Order. But whether it is or isn't, it really has, that whole attack really caused an archetypal rage response, like the infidels were back.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, as you know, when we first mobilized to go into Afghanistan, Bush invoked the term crusade, which of course had a great many of the Muslim Americans here in the United States upset, because crusade is, of course, associated with the Crusades for the Holy Land. And it's interesting that they're using this religious terminology, particularly jihadist terminology, in reference to these campaigns to drive out Iran. But it kind of underscores kind of this religious element that we feel is in part neo-Gnostic, really dominionist. Right now, that's driving the administration.
But we're really curious as to whether or not it's the operation was basically a reference to the Knights Templar or not. I mean, it seems to fit. It seems the mold certainly seems to fit, and I know, and I'm pretty sure that it's going to cause the fundamentalists to play fast and loose with the term Great Satan in reference to the United States.
All right, well, let me ask you a couple of questions, and we have one also from a listener, okay? If we can do that?
Okay. Sure.
And I want to go back to the Knights Templar motif, which doesn't surprise you guys in the least, I'm sure, but Liam from Northern Ireland says to ask you about when Iraq was taken over by the Grand Ayatollah, was it Sistani?
Well, Ayatollah Sistani is basically the lover boy of the neocons. He's basically supposed to be the guy that's keeping the Shiites in line while America rebuilds the country. Well, now, whether or not he's been successful is a different story altogether.
Well, I guess Liam thinks it's interesting that he was taken to Britain for a, quote, operation.
Yeah,
okay.
No, he is in the pockets of the neoconservatives, basically to try to shift those Shiites away from the Iranian influence and get them on the side of basically the neoconservatives who are trying to basically build Iraq in their own image, and those Shiites have to be converted away from Iran if southern Iraq in general, and Basra in particular, is to basically come under the control of the forces, of the American forces over there, because again, Basra, it's supposed to be the Bethlehem of the world government, and
at least according to the Roman Claif blueprint provided by H.G. Wells in The Shape of Things to Come.
Yeah.
And by the way, in The Shape of Things to Come, a lot of his predictions well, if you want to call them that, predictions in quotes. The timetable was slightly off.
Yeah. I mean, the Basra conference was supposed to happen in 1978.
1978, but there was a great deal of uncanny precision concerning a lot of the prognostications that H.G. Wells presented in that book. I mean, the conflagration that he presents in the book that leads to World War II is not unlike a lot of the many border disturbances that actually led to a final conflagration in Germany that led to World War II. I mean, he has the rate of the germs, which is extremely his whole the whole depiction of this explosion of pandemics is very, very. I mean, it synchronizes very much with today, with avian flu, with mad cow disease. Now you got salmonella and peanut butter. I mean, for crying out loud, a lot of this is very much synchronizes with current events. And as you know, and as many of the listeners know, when we did the series Invoking the Beyond, when we established the elitist pedigree of H.G. Wells, many of you already know that he was privy to certain plans. Of course, he was privy, and when he was part of the Coefficients Club, the Coefficients Club was very, many of its members were very much hot to trot to begin a war with Germany. So much so, it even disturbed one Coefficients Club member, Bertrand Russell. But at any rate, this should be indicative of why, to a certain extent, why Basra has come into focus in terms of the conflagrations in the Middle East.
And what will happen to play out H.G. Wells' script, and to have Basra be the Bethlehem of the New World Order. One of two things will happen. Barack Obama will come to power, and he will be led by the trilateralist clique of Zbigniew Brzezinski, and this clique will, through diplomacy, seek to transform Iran into an asset of America. And if that happens, then the Iranian influence in Basra becomes a positive one and nothing to worry about, and plans can go ahead with basically having that Basra be having that city be the center of an emerging world state. Or if that doesn't work, now if that doesn't work with Barack Obama and the trilateralist crowd, then they'll try to basically politically isolate Iran rather, and do what the current administration is doing. If John McCain comes to power, he will continue with the same trajectory that the Bush administration has. He will not seek to change Iran into an asset of the United States. Instead, there will be an invasion somewhere within that 4-year time span that he is in power.
And they may have the pretext already because, as you know, Viz, we did an interview with you a little while back over the assassination of Benazir Bhutto. And one of the motives that we contended was underpinning the assassination of Benazir Bhutto was, as you know, Bhutto wanted to give the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, access to the nuclear network of A.Q. Khan in Pakistan. Well, of course, she was assassinated, and that didn't happen. And as a result, intelligence sources have now revealed that there's a direct link between Pakistan and Iran, and that actual nuclear weapons know-how, knowledge concerning nuclear technology, has actually been funneled to Iran. So Iran may, in fact, procure the means to become a nuclear power, at which time it may not even be necessary for the neoconservatives to contrive a reason. They might in fact have a real genuine nuclear threat from Iran, in which case they have the pretext for war.
And Israel might actually go in and start it before us, and then we would actually go in after Israel conducted strikes and all. I mean, it's a win-win. They make it sound like a nuclear Iran is a threat to them and all, but it's really a win-win situation in some respects for the power elite because, well, that either serves as a pretext for invasion, or if Iran is transformed into an asset under Barack Obama and the trilateralist clique that's controlling him, then you have another nuclear card in your pocket for whoever it is that you want to go against. Namely, with Zbigniew Brzezinski, he's had a wet dream concerning going after China and Russia for quite some time. So,
well, he plays. I tell you what, sure. Brzezinski talks out of both sides of his neck when it's perfect, and he's allowed to go back and forth. And it's almost like the guy who like two guys are going to fight, or maybe they're not going to fight, and the guy in the middle goes over the one and says, "Did you hear what he said about you?" And
exactly.
You take that?
Well, Brzezinski really didn't have any problems with the neocons initially because they were following the grand chessboard to a T and all. Now, where he started to get pissed at them is when there was a deviation from the grand chessboard by sidelining the United Nations. If you read the book, The Grand Chessboard, he never meant for the United Nations to be sidelined. He meant for it. As a matter of fact, when the American empire folds, it's supposed to unfold into a one world government that has the United Nations as one of its centerpieces. And so he only got really ticked at the neocons prior. After he ticked at the neocons after they deviated from his script in that respect, and then go along.
Now, if you notice, he's invoking a whole bunch of anti-imperialist rhetoric. But if you read the Grand Chessboard, in the Grand Chessboard, he openly advocates, in his own words, imperial mobilization.
Yeah, an imperial geostrategy.
Yeah. So, the guy's a hypocrite. He's really a piece of trash.
I think that... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, the thing is, Ziggy's doing what he's supposed to do, and the way that he can just kind of sashay back and forth between these two camps, because I've seen him say one thing on, say, CNN with Blitzer and then come out and write something else. This guy goes back and forth. Everybody seems never to call him on stuff.
Yeah, well, I had a teacher he was an old man on the tail end of his life who really didn't feel like putting on any kind of pretense at this point. He was basically entering what he considered to be the terminal stage or something. And so when I talked about Brzezinski to him, one of the things he called him was quote unquote a mean Polak. But one of his observations, his racism aside, and all. One of his observations that really got me concerning Brzezinski was he said to me, he was like, "Don't you notice that when the man smiles, his eyes never smile?" That's basically he is, and that's true. Brzezinski is a cold bastard, and his pragmatism will cause him to use any and everything under the sun.
Well, essentially, with the Cold War and with the nuclear arms race, that whole dialectic, which he worked in part to sustain after he built up the Mujahideen and everything to fight the Sovs, which now have come back to bite us in the butt through Al Qaeda. But the way he characterized that entire dialectic was as a calculated game of chicken. That, and if you listen to the language he invokes, game. He refers to this entire geopolitical setup as a game, and in fact he's called it the Grand Chessboard. He literally considers this a game, and you and I are nothing more than pawns. And he He is just
the fact that this game holds sway, 6 billion human souls, it means nothing to him.
Oh, no.
His eyes ain't smiling.
Listen, he and Kissinger and the rest of them know the handshake, and they have ice water in their veins. Certainly it isn't blood, and if it is blood, it's probably not red. Listen, can I interject a couple of questions that some people have brought up?
Sure.
Is it all right? Okay. This comes by way of definitions in a sense, and it's pretty valid. Eric from the Queen City said, when the Collins brothers are talking about neo-Gnostics, are they talking Neoplatonist? That's the first part. Go ahead.
Well, with neo-Gnostics, okay, Neoplatonism kind of gave rise to traditional Gnosticism. What neo-Gnosticism is the neo-Gnostics, as you know, with traditional Gnostics, the traditional Gnostics considered the material universe. I'm sorry, I'm going to invoke some academic language here that all the listeners have probably heard 1,000 times, but they considered the ontological plane of the physical universe hell. Yeah, they considered the physical universe hell because Jehovah was trapping the spirits of man in physical bodies, thus restricting his knowledge and restricting him from attaining gnosis. Jehovah was considered evil. He was caricatured as the archon of arrogance. Now, what the neo-Gnostics do is the neo-Gnostics see the transcendent articles of faith, in particular the end of days, heaven, the eschaton. They see all these transcendent concepts as being emergent here in the physical universe. The traditional Gnostics, they would have virtually nothing to do with the physical universe. They would give it no epistemological or metaphysical currency. It was all just an evil hologram. For the neo-Gnostics, the physical universe is of paramount importance because that is where neo-Gnostics believe that they will basically bring heaven to earth. They will bring heaven about here in the immanent cosmos. And that comes from the term in manere, which means to remain within. It's a Latin term which means to remain within, and to remain within what? To remain within the physical cosmos. And thus when you immanentize a transcendent article of faith, an object of faith, you basically draw it into grip of human knowledge. You draw it into the physical universe.
So, in other words, with a neo-Gnostic group within the Islamic world, such as the Wahhabists, the sixth pillar of faith, holy war, jihad, is no longer a spiritual battle inside where you wrestle not against flesh and blood.
It becomes pure flesh and blood.
But the jihad becomes a full-blown, real political shooting war.
Exactly, and it's the same. It was the same with communism, fascism. Both of those qualify as strains of neo-Gnosticism. They both envisioned an eschaton here in the physical universe. And whether it was the Marxist, stateless socialism, workers' paradise, or whether it was the Third Reich.
And the neo-Gnostic subversives within the Christian world here in the West, the Dominionist, take the biblical concept of dominion and change it so that it stops being some kind of spiritual dominion. It becomes a political coup.
Yeah, political dominion. So sorry.
No, I want because you couldn't know this, but I mean there's some stuff piling up here. So,
okay.
I know you can finish your thought, and then I've got a bunch of machine gun stuff to run by.
Sure, go right ahead.
All right. Well, first of all, to me, and this is just my little thing, and I just want to give you a yes, no, or whatever. Neoplatonists now, to me, are basically elites that I don't even believe. I think they're atheists. I mean, I don't see where they think there's anything other. I mean, that their concept always was Elysian Fields or something. But, I mean, the Platonists, I mean, even though Plato was brilliant and he was also prophetic, to me he was an out-and-out right elite and also another stone-cold dude.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he really, I mean, he had no problem with advocating eugenics and advocating infanticide and really a elitist, stratified society. Now, as I understand it, according to some scholars, he recanted his views later on. But nevertheless, damage was done.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
So,
and I'm going to guess he was on his deathbed too.
Yeah, exactly. That's always the place where you recant.
Right,
I've had my fun. It's time to go to heaven.
All right. Exactly. I see the light.
The light's growing dim. I'm sorry.
Now, this is kind of interesting because I would say in the Trotskyite type of sense, this could be an accurate assumption, but I'm going to run it by you, and that is, he asks again, and we have some other questions after this, are neocons and neoliberals the same thing? I would say, yes, but go ahead.
Well, okay, both are basically seeking a world state. The difference is this, is that the neoconservatives seek a world state through an outright military campaign.
Yeah.
And all. The neoliberals basically want to conduct their conquest through international entities such as the IMF and the World Bank, and they want the military to basically be there as a third option repo man.
Yeah.
And that's but they would prefer to mostly
do it through diplomacy, through treaty,
and through weaponized economics.
Yeah.
Because when you take an IMF loan, the bailout conditions basically enslave you.
Yeah.
So that's the only real difference. But like any dialectic, the outcome is the same.
Yeah. The neoconservative versus neoliberal dialectic, both are just competing strains of socio-political utopianism. So there's very little difference.
All right, we have some more questions, and it says the Collins brothers brought up that the future is to be ruled by decree. I recently found out that the reason the oil companies can't get access to Anwar in Alaska is only due to an executive order. What doesn't compute is why all the sound and fury by the, quote, conservatives over and all the president would seem to have to do is write a new EO. My observation is that executive orders or decrees have more authority in Congress or for the presidents that follow. Is the observation true? The EOs really do return government, and I'm just going to jump in here, to a monarchical form. Basically, if you're going to write EOs, you don't need any other branches of government. Now I'm going to throw it back to you guys.
Well, they are basically broad policy memorandums that allow the president to write law, in my opinion. There might be sometimes, in a state of a legitimate emergency, there might be a place for executive orders, but the presidents have, especially starting with Nixon, played very fast and loose with executive orders to the point where you look at Congress and say, what's the point here, and everything, because it has allowed the executive branch of government to basically legislate.
Yeah.
And this is a blatant violation of the separation of powers that was created by the Freedom Documents, in particular the Constitution.
When you can't rule according to executive order and everything, you can rule through line item veto as well.
But there was a whole slew of executive orders that came out during the Nixon administration that would have effectively led to an end, a suspension, an indefinite suspension of constitutional government here in the event of an emergency. All we needed was some kind of major catastrophic event, and this country would have found itself, indefinitely in the grip of a dictatorship, and basically the Constitution would have been non-existent for God knows how long.
Now, if it's okay, what I went on to do is I threatened that I'd like to speak to the Knights Templar motif.
Yeah, sure.
Are you okay with that?
Sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Now, this is just something I brain farted, on the other day, and this is not really part of it. It's an entree into where I'm going. Where do we believe geographically the Garden of Eden was?
Okay, the garden. Well, the garden. I have no idea where it was located. What I know is that my personal opinion is that theologians have gotten it wrong by saying that Eden was the garden. I believe that Eden was the earth. If you go back and you read Genesis, it says that he planted a garden in the midst of Eden, and so I believe that the garden is supposed to basically represent the headquarters, the seat of authority over the earth, and that's why the Adam and Eve were pushed out of the garden because they were no longer in that seat of authority, and Satan had tricked them into giving the seat of authority over to him. But I'm not too sure where the geographic location of Eden was.
Well, the only reason I bring this up, I was thinking about this the other day, and and we'll get there. Now, like I said, I don't want to draw too much here, but we were just kicking this through, Lady Viz and I. But we know that obviously, and it's funny that commercially we understand the title, but we don't know where it comes from. A lot of us, and that's the movie East of Eden.
Yeah.
And as you well know, Hagar and Ishmael were expulsed, but promised to be a great seed, and he sent them east. Now, if the Semites, well, I don't even want to use that word Semites, I think it's a misnomer. If the Arab seed, the people, now obviously, populated what we now know as the Middle East, it's interesting. Now, that isn't the real point, but what I'm thinking about is, was not Basra or Baghdad, more likely Baghdad, can we see that as possibly the center of what was Babylon?
Yes,
absolutely.
And the significance of that, it's never been lost on us, is that,
right.
It seemed to start in Babylon, and now it seems to be ending in Babylon.
Yeah.
It seems that everything has come full circle, like the snake eating its tail and everything. And Basra really is supposed to be, like a neo-Gnostic version of Bethlehem, in our opinion, and all, because it is the birthplace of something that is messianic and utopian in nature to the power elite. It's the birthplace of the world state and everything. So long as you can get the Iranians the hell out, or make their influence a positive one over there, and they might invade Iran to basically expunge that negative Iranian influence in Basra, so that Basra can act as the headquarters for this global conference that Wells prescribed in his book, The Shape of Things to Come.
Now, I have to tell you, we are bound by the clock on this, and we got 9 minutes before the hour. So I just want you to frame whatever you have to do from this point on, and that's going to be obviously affected by what I ask you. But what I find interesting is, there is, quote, a fixation on Iraq or Baghdad or Basra. It almost seems like a return to Babylonianism. However, I think we all know, and going back to the Knights Templar motif, that Jerusalem, as you know, is eyeballed by Satan. I will just say it might be a coincidence that the Vatican is very, very protective of Jerusalem, and the Templars obviously cut their teeth on protecting, quote, protecting pilgrims on their the journeys to the Holy Land. All right, I'm going to just throw that out to you because I'm saying that eventually, the prize is Jerusalem. You've mentioned Bethlehem. We've talked about perhaps starting a center of a one world government, whatever, in what I would call the New Babylon. So, that's a bit there, and I'm going to throw it to you. And I don't think we'll have much time left, but, you guys have the last shot.
Well, it's very interesting, Viz, because while she was making her bid for the presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton said that if anybody basically messed with Israel, that we would obliterate them. I believe that was the exact word that she used too. That America was committed to obliterating Israel's enemies.
We are obliteration. That's right.
Obliteration 2008. But and if you notice, there's something of a preoccupation with with Israel amongst the neoconservatives and their closely aligned dominionist comrades. They have this preoccupation with Israel, and I don't. It's not a biblical notion of Israel. It's not one that is consistent with Scripture.
Although they will play to the religious crowd to suit their agenda concerning Israel.
Right.
And
exactly. But it's more of a neo-Gnostic conception of Israel. In fact, they've gone back and basically given a neo-Gnostic reconceptualization of all traditional biblical eschatology, all the traditional prophecies of the end times. They have basically turned them on their head and bowdlerized them to the point where it's not even in any way identifiable as traditional Christianity.
I think there's also a lot of deep politics at play there, in the respect that I think Israel is supposed to is being protected by certain factions of the power elite here in the United States, because Israel is supposed to be a nuclear proxy for the Western power elite's good friends, the Saudi royals. Pakistan and Israel are basically seen by the Saudi royals as their nuclear proxy for dealing with places like Iran and Iraq and places that basically see them as hedonists, as heretics, as people that have turned their backs on the faith, and so I think that probably plays into the equation as well.
Well, to me, there is no doubt that, and of course, Ziggy in this situation was prophetic and very pointed in stating in the chessboard that we shouldn't mess with Iran. We talked about this before, because what you'll do is you'll galvanize an axis of both Iran. Not of both, but Iran, China, and Russia. And
right.
Whenever the shoe drops in Iran, that is going to, I think, put us on a course that cannot be diverted from absolute brinksmanship.
Well, let me give you a little piece of that domino effect right now. When we attack Iran, when we go to fight Iran, these guys don't fight traditional wars. Okay, these are mean bastards that fight asymmetrically, and by that I mean that they're going to engage in covert and guerrilla warfare, dirty warfare, and there are Hezbollah and Iranian Revolutionary Guard operatives over in Latin America, particularly they're in Nicaragua right now, because Daniel Ortega has allowed them to come in with Venezuela and develop Monkey Point. But if we were to move and invade Iran, and I believe it's going to happen because the power elites Bethlehem, their evil counterpart to Bethlehem, Basra, has to be liberated from that Iranian influence. What you might see is these Hezbollah and Iranian Revolutionary Guard operatives coming over our borders, which are invisible, non-existent, and conducting some major terrorist attacks here in the United States. This is a war that will be brought home to the people, because they are asymmetrical guys. That's how they fight. They fight dirty, look at the Besiege. They had what was known as the Besiege when they were going up against Iraq, and basically that was nothing more than sending people running headlong at Iraqi tanks back when Saddam Hussein was still in power. Like in a suicide mad dash, and you would say, well, that's not going to work, but it did. It worked, and everything. You know, these are guys that are not scared to die in the process, and they're not scared of fighting asymmetrical and dirty.
All right, now this is going to be a tough one for you, and I just want to get out of here. This will be the last question. I have a suspicion that the United States believes it's going to perhaps unleash something differently, but certainly I think they're going to try to do this without boots on the ground. If they were to place boots on the ground, I don't think it would happen until the spring, but I think they're going to unleash some stuff that we may not have seen before. And with this, guys, you got about a minute.
Well,
I
the Pentagon was asked to take the nuclear option off the table, and they didn't. You know, Seymour Hersh brought that out, and it hasn't been denied. And and Cheney has always been insistent on having that nuclear option on the table as it relates to Iran. So that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I never know who I'm speaking with. So whoever was speaking, but the other person speaking.
No, I was just going to elaborate a little bit on that point. I mean, I believe, as you do, Viz, that eventually those weapons, the nuclear weapons, are not there just being stockpiled to gather dust. I believe that eventually they are meant to be used, if in at least some limited fashion. And as the predictive programming literature of H.G. Wells and many others who have been closely associated with the power elite down throughout the centuries have shown, a nuclear exchange would be a great catalytic kind of event to basically facilitate the formation of a one-world socialist totalitarian order. Because after all, what can you do? What better way to convince people to accept utopia by scaring the hell out of them into it?
All right, we've been talking with Philip and Paul Collins, and we thank you for coming on. And we'll be talking about other things throughout the Knollapalooza that have to do with exactly what we're talking about today. We touched upon some of it earlier. Again, folks, they have collaborated on 2 books. That would be The Hidden Face of Terrorism. This is the long title, The Dark Side of Social Engineering, from Antiquity to September 11th, and also The Ascendancy of the Scientific Dictatorship. Guys, thanks for being with us. We'll see you in a short time anyway, and thanks for joining us.
Okay, rock on, brother.
Yeah, later.
All right, thank you, guys. Thank you, Philip.
Rock on.
Right foods. Okay. All right, there it goes. Philip and Paul Collins with us from the 8 to 9 o'clock hour. We thank you very much for being with us. The time does go quickly. There's no doubt when they're around. There's no waste, no fat.